Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am obsessed with all things to do with ultrasound. I'm an empty nester who has spent the last 28 years scanning in all different kinds of situations: clinics, hospitals, point of service, emergency departments, private offices, echo, vascular, general, high risk OB, and want to dive down deep into all things to do with technology, techniques, and transformation. It's time we take ultrasound to the next level. Think of this like your little power boost on your commute to all things ultrasound, along your way to the thing that we call work. So pull up a seat, make sure you're comfy, and be ready to be challenged and encouraged as we learn it's all about the frequency. Today's guest is Heather Monarrez. Her career journey is a testament to her dedication to sonography education. Before taking on her current role as program director at the Sacramento Ultrasound Institute, she gained invaluable experience as a clinical coordinator in Texas and Ohio. And as a program director in South Carolina, her passion for excellence led her to become an expert in curriculum design, building programs that bridge the gap between classroom theory and real-world clinical practice. A busy mom of three, Heather Monarrez brings a wealth of experience and a relatable, down-to-earth perspective to our show. Please help me welcome Heather Monarrez. Heather is with us today to talk about one of our favorite topics of clinical education. Heather, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So start by telling us a little bit about why you chose ultrasound and why you got to where you're at. And
So I feel like ultrasound kind of chose me.
yeah,
This was a second career choice for me. I was working in the hospital and I was, kind of barely getting by. And I found out that in my office, the ultrasound tech made more than our boss did. And I said, I need to go back to school.
absolutely.
So I did some research, went back to school with three children under the age of 5, and I didn't know I'd fall in love with it like I did. I definitely fell in love with it. Teaching fell into my lap as well. I got out, was working, and my old program director, who's still my mentor, came back and said, "Hey, can you come teach the vascular class?" And I was like, "Me? I don't even know if I can." She's like, "You'd be great at it." And so I came back and I absolutely loved it. It was a whole other level of rewarding for me. You have your patients, that's a level rewarding, but
Mm-hmm.
know that you're touching the students and teaching the students who are going to be with more patients. That was a whole other level for rewarding for me. So, um, but yeah, ultrasound has been my heart and soul for about 12 years now.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate all the educators out there. I came from a family of educators, not in ultrasound, but in
Yeah.
general education. And um, great grandmother was an educator. So I think it's just in my blood to really love educators.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny
You
that you
know,
say that. My whole family are educators who K-12, but maybe that's why I took to it so well, coming from the field itself. But yes, education is to me is big. It's one thing that, I tell my students, that's something that someone can never take away from you is your
right. And it's so empowering, you know?
yes.
It's
Yes.
just, it gives you so many options and things to do and things to think about, and
Yep.
love it.
Yep.
I
At the end of
love
the
it.
day, you can lose everything, but they're never going to take that education away from you.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
And I love that in this field, people use their time and energy to educate me. And so I only feel it part of my duty to turn around and give back to others as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what makes this profession different than, say, nursing or some other profession, right? Because anybody can show you how to be a nurse and you can train to be a nurse, but in sonography, there's a skill,
Mhm.
there's a knack. And to have people really kind of come alongside you and grab a hold of your hand a
Yeah.
little bit
I tell
is,
people all the time, the only thing that I think is very comparable to what we do is a surgeon, because, we
mm,
skill based. Our hands, if we don't have our hands, we can't do our job. So,
yeah, I
and
was
it's
telling my,
totally skill based.
yeah,
Yeah.
I told my kids, don't mess with the golden arm, right? Don't, don't break my golden
Exactly. You
arm.
only get one of those. I tell my
Yeah,
students all the time. I'm also all really big in our lab. I say, I can show you how I got it, but you're going to have to develop the skills to do it on your own. So,
right,
I can give you little tips and tricks, but it is 1000% a skill based, thing that we do. And, um, you can be the smartest human in the world, but if you don't have that skill,
right,
you're not going to be a great sonographer.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I
So
tell my
let's
students,
start with a big broad overview of sonography education because I think there's a lot of different parts to it, right?
Mhm.
So talk to us about the fundamental components to a good education.
Yeah, so I mean, you have, the didactic part, which, most people know. We teach you to take that test, to take those credential tests. That's, where it becomes a little bit hard. Then you have that lab component where we try to simulate clinical as much as possible, where you're kind of taking what you had in didactic and you're marrying it with that skill base that we talked about. And then I think what the most important part is, clinical education, going to clinical, learning everything that you do on a full day and taking every single both of those components, the lab and the didactic, and really putting it together in real world like applications. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to have all three, right?
mhm.
You just
Yes,
have to.
yeah,
So talk about the transition to clinicals then.
yeah. So, clinicals. I always tell, my students that once they go to their first set of clinicals, they're going to be changed, because all the things that we're up there preaching about, like, I promise you, you're not going to have these amazing bodies to scan on once you get to clinical. And then they come back, oh my gosh, you were right. It's a lot harder. But, overcoming and adapting, and, just even the knowledge base, seeing things for the first time. We talk about pathology in lab and in didactic, but when they see the things for the first time, I have my students fill out a journal entry for every week, and I love reading it, especially when they first start out at clinical. It's like, I actually saw hemangioma, things like that, or
Mhm.
gallstones, things they get so excited about because it was only something that we read about in class. So giving that real world aspect to what we have been talking about for however long, what we're scanning, using those critical thinking skills while you're in there with a patient. I think the best clinical preceptors are the ones that are actively engaged and asking them questions while they're in clinical, because that is what clinical is for. Putting all that together and utilizing how to work with people. I get a lot of students that are 18, 19 years old, learning how to be a professional. This is how you act.
Right,
You're working in a department, this is how,
right,
and I always tell my students, um, a lot of departments just want to know that you're going to be in there in the trenches with them, like
right,
you're not going to be the one that's like, I can't do that.
right,
Like
right.
a good department student would be someone that's going to be ready to go and in that department, and really push their sleeves up to really utilize what they're doing, not be just a fly on the wall, but actually discuss those different steps, and be an active learner.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much to it, right? Like
Absolutely.
um that patient interaction how much to share, how much not to
Yes,
share, right? And the appropriate questions, right? That's
exactly.
the way to word things.
Exactly.
I'm very specific about how I ask things and when I ask them because it makes a difference, right?
Right.
Like,
Cooperation, just to get the patients cooperating. Like, what do you need
right.
to say to get them to fully cooperate with you? That's a skill I can't teach. That's something that they have
Yeah.
to learn in clinical, while they're with different techs, to develop that skill.
Yeah, I teach a technique called mirroring and matching, right?
Okay.
That you can do with your patients right away that just start to kind of get that connection going
Yeah,
quickly because we don't have a lot of time, right? And we have to uh, catch that connection quick so
exactly.
that we develop that trust, right,
Right.
with the patient. And when we're talking about healthcare and timeliness and everybody's,
Mm,
overworked and underpaid,
yes,
right? Um, being able to do that quickly uh,
exactly.
is critical.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something I can't teach in the lab. We can simulate as much as possible, but personality types can't, some patients are cooperative, some are, just having a bad day, and learning that different types of personalities and how to work through them is super important.
Yeah. So you talk about the structure of a clinical rotation with various different sites.
Mhm.
Do you try to put students at several different sites then? Is
Yeah,
that
I mean, perfect world. I would have
right?
a bunch of different clinical sites, and I would be able to give each student, that where they could work kind of thing, a dedicated OB spot, a dedicated vascular spot, a general spot, hospitals, outpatients, really giving them different varieties, in a perfect world. And, some I do have some great clinical sites that I get to rotate students through, but it depends on, the competency levels. So my program is accredited in abdomen extended and OBGYN. So we have certain, competencies that they have to get. So sometimes that is different rotations. Like I said, I'm really big on getting the student a well-rounded education.
Mhm.
Letting them test out each of these different departments and each of these different roles that we have in sonography, because that's what's going to make them a good sonographer. Some of them are come in and they're dead set on how they want to scan OB, and then they fall in love with vascular, or vice
Mhm.
versa. I love always asking my students in the beginning who wants to do what, just to see in the beginning where they are, and then once they go to clinical, some of them change their mind, or some of them are really just a lot more gung-ho on it. But that's really big for me, is to try to get them those different areas so they can actually figure out where they want to work or what they want to do. And then obviously, competencies again, we have, in the beginning, they start out small, they're just comping on the aorta, the IVC, then they kind of build liver, gallbladder, they're building their competencies. And then, at the end, they're have to do a whole abdomen complete. And then with the OB, we put different things together. It depends. We kind of give the OB sonographer more of a hands-on approach to that, how they want to do their competencies, because the fact getting a student to scan in a whole entire anatomy is
Right.
almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That can be tough.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So some of the clinical sites will say, you can get put it together over time, and that helps too.
Yeah. I like to start with biophysical profiles.
Yes,
That's an easy
exactly.
win. That's an easy, good, quick win,
Exactly.
And
Yes.
then you work up from there, I guess. But I'd like to talk for you to talk about how immensely important the partnership is to of the clinical sites, right? Like me as a traveler right now, just going to so many places that don't have students. And I think, man, this is why you need a traveler because you don't have students, possibly,
Exactly.
you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
So tell us why you think it's so important to have students in your location.
Well, I mean, we're only as good as our clinical sites. I can only give the students so much. And then I treat my clinical sites like gold because like you said, a lot of them I have a hard time getting because they just don't have time or they're all travelers. And the in my opinion, it gives you a nice pipeline. It gives you a nice if you're partnered with a great school that is accredited and you can trust them, you can train them the way that you want to train them.
Mhm.
Um, and have really good sonographers come out of it because not only do you get them fresh, but you get them excited and jumped in to learn. So clinical sites, a lot of my students get hired right at their clinical site. I mean, it's very common for them to get hired because you get to see their work ethic, you get to see all of it. And again, I'm really big on clinical, obviously, because I place students there, but also, as a department lead, you'd be remiss not to have students. They keep you on your toes. They're going to keep your
Right.
staff. They're going to ask them off the wall questions, really keeping them engaged. So it's only going to be better for your department. You're going to see things, you're going to do things, and you're also going to have yourself a nice plethora of employees one day. So, the departments that don't take clinical students, I think again that I think they're just shooting themselves in the foot. You're never going to solve your staffing problem if you're not partnered with a good school.
Yeah, and you get to train them just the
Yeah,
way you want them to, like everybody goes through different types of training or, and this is a good way to just kind of check them out before you hire them,
yeah,
and to
for
train them
sure.
the way you want. So I
And
think,
you get first dibs out of the whole class. You get
right,
like, oh,
right.
this one's the best one. I'm gonna keep her. And you get to hire them early on. A lot of people miss that boat. They don't see it. They just see short staff. Can't do it now. Maybe eventually when I get staffed and I'm like, you don't understand, it'll help you. But
Hmm.
seeing that bigger picture is a little bit harder for some people, but I try my best. Our program tries very hard to take some of the added pressure off of our clinical sites as well, because we know that you have a full-time job, and our job, we know that our jobs are stressful. So I don't want to make a student extra stressful for you. I tell my students, be that extra hand for them. Find out what your preceptor likes, and they like 4 towels when they're doing this exam.
Yeah,
Make their jobs better, because if you make their job easier, they're more apt to give you some more scan time. If
right.
helping them get through exams quicker, they're going to give you a lot more feedback, and they're going to be a lot more comfortable letting you take over and scan and get more scanning time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What are some of the challenges of clinical education? Because we all know
Yeah.
there's always challenges.
Always challenges. I think, some departments have it down. Yeah, I have my tried and true clinical spots that, they have it down. Some of them just have a hard time, OB specifically, you just don't have a lot of scan time for the students because the dedicated OB offices sometimes are just stacked with patients and they're just adding on more and more. But just even if the student doesn't get a lot of scan time, just them watching you is invaluable. Seeing your interaction, and then when they do get to scan, that's obviously better off. But just scan time is probably the biggest. Other than that, like I said, I would love to have my students rotate at all these different areas, but um, again, I'm limited to my clinical sites, so just a variety of different types of scans that you get too. You know, you're going to have, if you're in a general department and you're working in the evenings, you know, you're going to see a lot more scrotums and you know,
Right.
ERs than you would if
Right.
you worked in a department in the morning, you know, where you're going to have fasting patients. So just, you know, trying to get students the same type of exposure to different clinical spots and, you know, what they see and the types of scans. You know, that's probably the biggest. Um, Other than that, you know, emotional preparedness, you know, I have students that are a little dramatic sometimes.
Hmm.
So, you know, there's no you can deal with drama in the hospital for a little bit, but you know, you're dealing with patients' lives sometimes. So, you know, leaving that drama at home, you know, really being mentally prepared and not freaking out when things happen. You know, just being exposed to that because, you know, I get, you know, 18, 19-year-olds that have never stepped foot inside a hospital before, you know, and their
Oh, wow.
anxiety is through the roof. So, you know, our clinical is one-on-one, so they go to clinical alone, and sometimes that's a lot for, you know, some of these students. So it's definitely a challenge to put people where I think they're going to flourish. You know, taking into consideration different personality types, you know, who's going to rise above, who's not, who's might be more interested in a dedicated OB spot, who might be more interested in a dedicated vascular spot. So there's a lot of things that go into placing students into clinical that it's not just plug and play. For our profession, we just can't. You know, we have different things that we have to hit. And, you know, different departments do way different things. You know,
Right.
I know,
Absolutely.
you know, some departments will do vascular, some will have their own dedicated vascular lab. So it just
Mhm.
depends. And taking that into fact and account and knowing that each student may not get the exact same experiences. And there's, you know, trying to wiggle around and figure out how, you know, which student's going to be best here, which student's not. That's why our clinical coordinators are, you know, their job is, you know, the most important because
Yeah.
it's more than just plugging and playing. It's really, you know, trying to get the best for our students and the best for our clinical sites because we're, like I said, we're only as good as our clinical sites. So
Yeah.
I try to spoil them as much as I can
Yeah.
in the ways that I can.
Yeah. Right.
Yes,
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's always a dance, right? I feel like
absolutely.
it's a dance. To know where the good fit is and maturity levels and
Hmm.
some of them just take off and I'm like,
Yep.
it took me forever to learn how to do that. How did
Right.
you do it in such a short time?
Yeah.
And
I always,
other people are more like me. I struggle, and then the light bulb comes off and it goes on. So,
I
but
tell
yeah,
my students all the time, I say, some of you will just get it. Some of you will just hold that probe, you'll put it down, and by golly, you'll get it. Some of
consent.
you
Yeah,
will be very strong didactically, you'll be really smart, you'll might struggle in lab, and then some of you will do both. And then some of you will struggle, you know, all together. But if you put the time in to dedicate to really hone in and you can learn it, it just some people just pick it up a lot quicker.
yeah,
And that because it is a skill. I mean, you know, there's only so much I can teach you. Uh,
right,
and there's only so much your preceptor can teach you.
right.
Other
Until
than
you
that,
just get
you know,
your own
you have to
hands-on
you
training.
have to do it on your own. And it is 100% a skill. And how do you develop a skill? Practice.
Practice,
Lots,
practice,
lots
practice.
of practice. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's stressful when you're learning something new, right? When
Right.
you're outside your comfort box and you're not sure what's going on and this, that, and the other. And then you have your own personal life. I know when I was a student way back in the day, um, I had a 3-year-old,
Hmm.
3 or 4 year old. I guess she was 3 or 3. Just finished x-ray school, went on to ultrasound because that's how you had to do it back in the day.
Yeah.
Um, but my dad had pancreatic cancer,
Mm.
and he discovered that while I was in an ultrasound school.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I think sometimes everything happens at the same time. So for
Yeah.
students who are in it, you have your own personal crisis at home going on sometimes, maybe not for everybody,
Yeah.
but then learning a new skill is challenging. So learning how to give yourself grace and give yourself credit for what you did do right, and how
Right.
some days all you did was I showed up. That
Yeah,
was the best I could
exactly.
do, like
Yes.
you got to
Yeah.
give yourself credit.
I tell my students, you probably won't feel confident as a sonographer until you're about a year out. And even then you'll be humbled every day.
Yeah. I say,
Every day you'll say,
yeah.
did I pick the right job? Am I good at this?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always those humbling moments, and it's nice for the students to be in clinical too, to see that, even some of the most seasoned technologists, like, struggle sometimes, and have bad days, or um you know learning how to navigate all that is invaluable, because I can sit there and talk about it all day long, but until they actually see it happen, um
Right.
and that it's a hard job. What we do is not easy, at all. um
No, not
I
at
have
all.
I can't tell you how many students I've had that that have come to me, beginning of the program, and said, I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. And I'm like, hey, if
Hard,
it was
or
easy, if it was
really just
easy, everyone would
important.
be doing it.
Like if you're diagnosing someone's cancer, like you sure in the heck better not want to miss that shit.
Exactly. This is not just a,
This is
fly by night career that you're going to.
right. This is a
Exactly.
job that makes a difference if you put the effort in to make the difference.
Exactly.
You
And
know,
you know that we're also in a field where we're only as good as we want to be. You
right,
know, I can't say that enough. We all know, we've all probably worked with people that just come in for a check, you know,
right.
and the ones that really do their job and dive in. Again, clinical is a great time for my students to see both of those. There
Yes.
could be departments where, someone really cares and goes above and beyond to look for extra, in our field. And then some are just literally just cashing a check every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
So, and teaching them, which one are you going to be? Because we all,
Well, and we're all going to get burnt out at some time,
oh,
right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so I find the people who are a little bit more engaged with professional societies or volunteering, or with students, engaged
Yeah,
with students and teaching and doing things above and beyond their routine work, are far less to be burnt out
I agree. Yes.
than those who just go through the whole day without any of that.
Yep.
So I really feel, for me personally, I come alive much more when I'm engaged with the SDMS conference next week. I'm looking forward to that. And I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but let me tell you something. Always can learn something new,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
And if you
Absolutely.
get to this level and you think that you can't learn something new, that you know all of it,
You'll be
that's a
humbled very
dangerous
quickly.
place to be,
Yes.
because
Yep.
medicine's changing.
Always.
25 years ago, we weren't doing fetal surgeries.
Exactly.
Now
Yeah.
we are. So we better figure that out,
Mhm. Right.
and
I
show
mean,
up, because we need to be a part of that team.
yeah, the advancements I've seen in my short time has just been, and it just keeps going. Um,
Yeah.
and there's
So
so
where do you see
much.
the future of clinical education going then?
So, like I said, I would love for every sonographer to have a chance to have students. And I understand that some departments just won't take a student for whatever reason, and sometimes the the actual texts themselves don't even get a say in it. But, you know, we're only as good as our clinical sites, and it helps, like you said, burnout. I mean,
Right.
we experienced a lot of that during COVID. Since COVID, I will say that, a lot of clinical sites stopped taking students after COVID, and they never really started back.
Yeah.
Um, so, we wonder why there's a shortage, of good sonographers that have, really good backgrounds. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely where I see the future going. I'm hoping that we can get these clinical partners, on board with, this is how you alleviate some of these shortages that you may have, is you partner with a good school, and you get a good pipeline in there. That's how I would like to see clinical, because clinical is so invaluable, because I teach the basics of ultrasound. I mean, that's all we have time for, is to teach, the bread and butter. They're going to learn everything else in clinical and when they're working. There's only so much time that we have for, clinical is where they learn the nuts and bolts, where they learn a little bit of the, high risk stuff. They were, the stuff
Right.
that we can barely touch on because we don't have time.
Right.
This is where they, really dive into all the advanced stuff that ultrasound can do. Um, and knowing that we only touch the surface of it.
Right.
But, making them lifelong learners. Because like you
Yeah.
said, there's so much more out there than what I can give them. So
Right.
clinical is so vital for that. Because that's where you're going to find those pediatric sonographers. That's where you're going to find those, high risk, the ones that had a mentor, take them under their wing and really teach them those larger skills. Because again, I have to do just the basics because that's all we have time for. Um,
Yeah.
so clinical is so vital, for those advanced techniques, especially, and that's where ultrasound's going. I mean, ultrasound, we do more and more and more every day. So those advanced techniques need to be taught. They need to be fostered, with
Right.
some of the younger ones, and that's where they learn it. Clinical,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. I remember some students coming out of school and going into a site where they did liver transplants
yeah,
and renal transplants at this hospital, because every hospital tends to have its specialty, right? You
mhm,
know, not every
exactly,
hospital does renal or liver transplants,
exactly.
and
Yeah,
then some rural hospitals, they do a little bit of
I
everything.
do it all. Yeah.
So, yeah, you kind of have to know a little bit about everything and
I
be
love my
ready for
students
the
going to
weird
those
and
rural
different,
ones. Yeah, yeah. I love
you
them
know.
going to rural hospitals, because I'm like, you get to see everything. Sometimes the bigger hospitals in the big cities have, the where you're only going to see a certain amount of things. The rural hospitals, by golly, you're going to see everything.
It all. You are gonna see it all. That's for sure. Absolutely.
Yep, that's the
So,
best part.
yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, just being flexible and being willing to learn
For sure. Yeah.
and
Flexibility is huge. I can't teach that. And we all know, as a sonographers, you have to be flexible. You have to be adaptable. If you're set in your ways and you cannot adapt, you're going to be miserable.
yeah,
And that's something that they learn in clinical. I always tell people, I get a lot of type A personalities that come into my program, very structured. I like it like this. And,
yeah,
and then what's my protocol? Where's my
yeah.
protocol? Okay, I'm going to give you a protocol that you have for school, but guess what? When you go to clinical,
It's gonna
have
change.
way other different protocols.
Yeah,
Some will have protocols that you have to do. Some will say you do your own protocol. I said, stop the worrying about so much about the protocols, evaluate the organ, and then prove that to the radiologist.
right.
Sometimes that's a concept,
Yeah,
that's like, we'd
yeah,
have to do what? I'm like, you evaluate or a protocol just is for your evaluation, just to prove that you evaluated it. I said,
Right.
so getting them to adapt and get out of those rigid, things that they're used to. Well, I know I'm supposed to do this. Well, sometimes you got to adapt. Sometimes you got to add things in there. Sometimes you got to take them away. So
Yeah.
being adaptable is a huge asset, especially that they learn in clinical, because, I can teach them all I want. They want straight A's. They want to know what they have to get in order to get a straight A, and sometimes you might have to you have to scan someone in the ICU, maybe on the top of your head,
Yeah.
You have to be adaptable. You're not always going to be the perfect
Sometimes you have to
ergonomic.
stand with your left hand.
That exactly. You're not going to
Yeah.
always be in that perfect ergonomic area. You have to learn to adapt and overcome. Utilizing those skills and seeing that work in clinical is definitely the what I see as a huge part of the future, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think AI can take any of that away from us, right?
No,
I think
no.
that's the unique part of ultrasound.
Yep, for
And
sure. Yep.
so
And just patient interaction. I mean,
right, right.
you're going to get a lot more, you're going to get better images if you have a cooperative patient. Well, how do you get a cooperative patient? Teaching
Yeah,
those like, soft skills, how to talk to a patient, how to talk to other departments, working with other departments, is huge. Because, in sonography, we go all over the place. And we work with lab, we work with,
mhm,
the nurses, um, and teaching those interpersonal skills. Another huge value of clinical for my students. Because, like I said, some of these students have never even had a job before. They
right.
don't understand those kind of soft skills, and that's stuff that I don't, we could talk on, but I don't get to teach. So that's why clinical is so, so, so big, for them. And, those little tips and tricks that you learn, through other people. Hey, I do it like this, or sometimes if I can't find this, I go over here, subcostally, or,
Yeah,
turn them on their side here when I can't see things. Because, we can give them all what we have, but we all know you don't learn until you're out there in it.
right,
Yeah.
right. When you struggle and struggle and struggle and can't find the kidney, or you
Yep.
can't find the ovary or
Yep.
whatever,
And
right?
then, yeah, I mean, that's
And
another
all of
thing,
a sudden, boop, there it is. And you're like, oh,
learning
I should have gone there first.
learning when that's the best image you're going to get,
Right.
that aha
Yes.
moment. You could sit there and work forever, but learn at one point in time, you have this aha moment where you're like, this is what I'm going to get,
Yeah.
balancing time with, how
Right.
long you scan. My students love to sit there and scan for hours and hours, and I'm like, yeah, guess what, that's not a luxury we have.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
not a luxury we have. You got to get what you can get, and that's the best that you can get, and getting them to that point to realize this is as good as it's going to get.
Right.
That's a skill set that, again, you learn in clinical. You learn when you're on the job. Um, that's not something that we can kind of replicate it in lab just a little bit, but when you have, some of these, uh, patient habitus that we have, out there in
Right.
clinical, certain things that we can't simulate. So,
Right.
again, that's what is so important about clinical, for my students to make them just even, you know, a lot better than, anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely shortcuts,
Yeah.
right? I remember a, a new hire coming out and it's like, Debbie, I'm scanning these twins and I can't find the kid's head. I know it has a head, but I can't get to it or find it. And
Yeah.
I went right in and showed her how to get it. She goes, man, you just went right to it. I'm like, okay, I've got a few years on you. Okay, like give yourself a break, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
Here's
Yeah.
my trick. Follow the spine, you know?
Right. 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 Exactly.
Roll
And
her
then,
over on her side, you know?
yeah. And then,
Nope.
correlating, patients' symptoms.
Yes.
What are they coming in for? Okay, so what are we looking for? What do you think we might find? Uh,
Yeah.
Getting those kind of aha moments where they're marrying what they learned and didactic with what a patient presents with, especially, vascular. You see something proximally, what are we going to expect distally?
Right.
What are we looking for? That a patient with, high cholesterol. Okay, what are we going to find? And
Right.
really working that kind of stuff out and, utilizing every single point that we have, um, to turn my students into really investigators. I'm really big on that. I use that word a lot, because that's what our job is. We're investigators,
Right.
we investigate what we're looking, and then we just have to prove it to, I call it the judge or radiologist, doctor, that this is
Right.
what we saw, this is what we found. And getting the student to really, understand that process and critically think is, so important for clinical, so important for clinical.
Yeah.
Uh, and that you just that hands-on approach.
Yeah. So be kind. I think sometimes it's a matter of learning how to just show up for work,
Yeah,
y- like, or show up for your clinical sites. Like, don't just roll out of bed, put your scrubs on, and throw your hair in a messy bun and show up,
yeah,
right? Like, really take some time to just kind of set your intention for the day and, you know, show up with
exactly.
some intention and some
Be
clarity,
present.
you
Yeah, be
know,
present. Yeah,
and presence so that you can really take in everything. There's
yeah,
just so much to take in when you're
yeah.
first learning.
Yeah, and I tell my students all the time, this is where you realize that you're in healthcare too.
Right,
This might be just your clinical rotation, and you're here, 30 some hours a week, but to the patient, this is a life altering moment.
right,
They're going to remember you. You may not remember them. They might be just a regular, whatever, day to day. And I speak on this a lot, especially my students going into clinical. I talk about it a lot, but also I say, once you're graduated and you're, 10 years out, don't ever forget that, that this
right,
is a life altering moment for some of these patients. And don't take that for granted. You're dealing with your own stuff. Don't bring it in, because this is scary. You have anxieties and stuff. And remember, you are a healthcare worker.
right.
We get so jaded sometimes as
Yeah,
healthcare workers, just going through the motions sometimes, or we might be having a bad day, but really knowing that for this patient, this is a monumental moment for them. And
right.
just to really humble yourself, as a sonographer or as a student, to know that this is, treat them like you would your grandma, your grandpa, your aunt, your uncle, your mom. That's something that is lost in healthcare today.
Yeah.
That
I think it's
personal.
a struggle. Like, I think this, as a student coming into healthcare, you don't realize how draining it can be for a 40-hour week, right? Because you're
Exactly.
constantly giving. So learning, how do you fill your own bucket after you've
Exactly.
just given everything?
Hmm.
And then you go home to three kids, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So how do you fill that bucket?
Exactly.
Because you can't, eventually you're going to run dry if you
Exactly.
don't fill it up. So how do you fill it um in a good way, right? So that you can continually keep giving and keep giving and keep
Hmm.
giving,
Hmm.
right? How do you take the breaks that you need? How do you step away and reground yourself? You
Exactly.
know?
Should be present every day, because
Yeah.
it's a lot harder than just being present every day. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is life changing. And I mean, those stories stick with you.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
When
Absolutely.
you find liver mets and when you find pancreatic cancer, when you find all these things, I mean, I remember their stories, an
Yeah.
older lady telling me how she was looking so forward to going on this cruise, and the family all finally got together to go on this cruise. And she was talking about this cruise they were going on. And I'm like, holy cow, she's got cancer.
Mhm.
Is she going to find out
Yeah.
before she goes? Are they going to wait until after she goes? Like, you know,
Right.
tough,
It's
right?
tough. It's draining. It's draining.
Yeah,
Very draining. But yeah, like you said, kind of resetting yourself. Um, it's a skill that you have to learn, that, you know, you leave some stuff at work,
right,
some stuff with you. Um, but that care and compassion, you know, I never want my students to, I want them always to realize that you are in healthcare. You know, care and compassion is something, you know, you may have gotten to this program because you looked it up and ultrasound makes the most and whatever, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's one thing, you know, but don't ever forget that you're responsible
for
for
people's lives.
these patients and these patients' lives, and it is heavy, and and it is heavy on my students. You know, I tell them all the time, I'm like, you're gonna you're in this nice little bubble of the school right now, but when you go to clinical, I'm like, it's gonna be draining because you're not only going to be doing basically a full-time job, but now, you know, you have schoolwork on top of it. And
Mhm.
right before you just did schoolwork, but now you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel everything that you do. These patients are gonna weigh on you. I have my students do journal entries, and I love reading about, you know,
I
all
love that idea.
experiences they have and all the different, you know, patients that they see, and, you know, the things that they really, really take home with them. And, you know, take home, and I say take home, but I mean, take on as their future
Right,
sonographers. You know, don't ever forget these moments that you have
right,
with
right,
patients, because that's what really builds you to be a good, caring, compassionate healthcare worker, sonographer.
right.
You know, those are the moments that really create who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and seeing those
And
aha
it
moments.
starts
That's good.
your own story as a sonographer because 10
Yeah,
years are going to go by fast and then you're going to be teaching the next,
exactly.
a set of students,
Yeah. I get so
and
many students that are like, Miss Heather, I want to be just like you. And I'm like, I was you. Like, I'm
yeah,
there, right there.
yeah,
So I want you to, I'm really big on a mentorship. You know, you can go wherever you want. You know, you can go be whoever you want to be. You could be
yes.
a, you know, a manager, a supervisor. You can go into education. You can go work for apps. You go work for the, you know, the,
Yeah, I think there's so many more options nowadays than when I
oh,
got into
so
it.
many more options.
And
Yes.
also, I think we should think of it as being creative. Like, anytime I step into surgery, I think, oh, I wonder how I can make something better,
Yeah,
right? Is there a way to make this better?
exactly.
What could I do to make this better? Right?
Yeah.
Because I think we could be inventors, right,
Oh,
of
yeah.
new things if we apply ourselves or if we get curious enough
Mhm.
about things,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah. I'm really big on work smarter, not harder. Uh,
yeah,
you know, a lot of, you could be, if you have a process change just because you're like, hey, this is not working right here. Why are we doing it like this? You know,
yeah,
speak up. Like, be that person that's not, oh, we've always done it like this. Well, is it working? You know,
yeah,
is that really working in our department, or
yeah,
we change it? Could we be better at this? And some, you know, just fostering that early on. You know, there's certain things that are, yes, tried and true that we have to do every single day, but,
right,
you know, can we innovate? You know, like you said, you know, can we
right,
innovate what we're doing? Can we, you know, change the way that we're doing it to, you know, change how we are, like, work smarter, not harder, you know, like, why are we
yeah,
taking 15 steps when we can take 5?
right, right,
And then, you know, just learning and fostering that kind of curiosity is huge, especially as an educator.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, awesome. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing all your expertise with us
Yeah,
and
pleasure.
your experience. It's been fun to talk to you and uh, share that enthusiasm and passion for education. So
Yeah,
thank you so much. I really appreciate you
yeah.
sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to It's All About the Frequency podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with a friend and remember to keep your frequency high.